experience in your career development. So we really want to thank you for being a part of today. And I'm going to turn it over to Adri Clark.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adri Clark, and I serve as the Director of Service Learning and Career Development here on campus. And I wonder if you would feel comfortable having the camera on. I don't know, it's just an invitation. If you would, just so we can all see each other, and that's wonderful. And the reason I ask is because today I am talking about sort of what are the advantages of being a transfer student. And so it's going to be a little interactive. It's not going to be completely sort of just listening to me. There's going to be, hopefully you'll take away some actual things that you can use when for your resume or talking about yourself to employers or graduate schools. So we're going to be doing a little bit of having some conversation and things like that. So since there's only 5 people here today, as well as Kristen and Gabby, I wonder if we could just go ahead and do a quick introduction. And if you could tell us what your major is and where you transferred from. So April, would you mind starting? Great. Kristen and Gabby, do you want to introduce yourselves since you're here and with us? Oh.
I'm Kristen Morrow, and I'm the Director of Transfer Pathways. So some of you may have talked to me as you were planning your transition to Western. Normally, in normal times, I go out to your community colleges and I meet with you guys once a week or once a term, depending on where you were at. But anyway, so I just want to let you know, and I can help you with your articulations if you've got questions about how your classes come over. I can talk to you about that part, and then I'll turn it over to Gabby, and she does the advising component.
Hi, my name is Gabby. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I work with student success and advising as an academic success advisor. And I focus on transfer and prospective student advising, and really what that's focusing on is that transition piece of moving from being in a different institution and then having that holistic support experience of being here at Western now. And so we focus on success strategies, getting you connected to the right resources on campus, getting you connected in your major, making sure that all of that's good in the system and that you're getting the right advising for your major. So that's where I come in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I think I'm just going to go ahead now and share my screen. So I have a little presentation we're going to go through. And hopefully you'll all be able to see everything. Hello. Okay. Okay. So here we're talking about the transfer advantage and how you can leverage your transfer experience in your career development. So oftentimes when we talk about transfer students in higher ed, we talk about, that they're making a big transition, and it's kind of oftentimes talked about from what's called a deficit perspective, thinking about how, it's a difficult transition and that it's there's a kind of like almost like a disadvantage from coming from a different university or college. And so I think that's not totally accurate. I think there's a lot of growth that happens through going through this kind of transition and making these kinds of changes in your life and adapt it to a new environment. So I really want to emphasize that today and helping you really see what you've gained through this experience. Obviously right now, transitioning, you're not just transitioning to a new institution, you're transitioning to online schooling, you're and just a very different environment in general. So you're just getting like a triple whammy here in terms of all the growth that you're going through right now. But just to kind of give a little bit of a context for what we're going to talking about today. First of all, I just want to talk a little bit about transition, like what that is. And typically a transition is a time when things are not completely stable. So there's oftentimes a little bit of disorientation, some confusion about, the different processes that you have to use, adjusting to a brand new culture. So oftentimes there's even kind of like a culture shock going from one culture, one institution to another. So oftentimes people talk about that when they travel or they go to a different country or do a study abroad or something. But so this is kind of similar, kind of adjusting to this new culture. So what you're doing now, you're getting used to new ways of doing things, new expectations, new traditions and policies. You might be adjusting to different sort of level of coursework just because it's now upper division type of coursework you're going through. So that just may be a transition that's, this takes a little toll. And then there's just a social disorientation oftentimes that happens as part of this process, making new connections, building relationships, figuring out who is there to help you out. But obviously there is opportunity for growth. So I wonder if anyone would feel comfortable just reflecting a little bit on this, thinking about these transitions. And does this resonate with you that you're kind of going through this type of transition right now? And anyone can feel welcome to share.
Yeah, I'd like to share.
Yeah.
When I went through Shemeketa, I went for a transfer degree because I did not know what I was going to do. So when I completed that, I kind of was just drifting around thinking, even completing the degree, and I did some jobs and some work, but I eventually figured out that I wanted to go into accounting. And when I moved over to Western University, it's just the whole culture was a lot different. Like the community college, there was a lot of more adult people, a lot older than me. They were just trying to finish degrees or going through years. But at the university, people are my age. We're going for similar goals. Like a lot of things align during my stay here. So I find that like a nice growth compared to my experience at a community college.
So very positive transition, I take it.
Yeah.
So finding kind of an environment that is a really good fit for you and matches your goals. It's great.
Yeah. The business department here has helped me a ton, and they're very friendly and happy people actually. So I'm very glad for that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. April, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I definitely second the feeling of disorientation with everything being online.
Yeah.
So because of that, for me, it's hard to kind of gauge right now how much of it is that and how much of it is going to a new institution. So I can't really speak to that yet. I think I might be able to in a couple of months when I don't even know. But it's interesting. I think, Ryan, you said about how community college is an older age demographic, and I relate to that. But weirdly, I find that I like fit in better with the more adult people at my community college. Like I knew that going to university, there'd be younger people, but I thought because, I'm transferring with an associates, I'll be in the upper division classes, it'll be older people. But I personally still feel this weird, like, am I the old person in this group? It's really odd. And like the main reason for that is out of high school, I was in the workforce for a long time before I went to college. And so I feel more like an employee first and a student second. And I think that hanging out with older people, that's more of a present for me at least. And so I connected with them on that level. And so it's been kind of weird to be like, oh my gosh, am I the old person? So I don't know. It's kind of fun.
And
though,
we'll
like,
talk about it a little bit later too.
Yeah.
That having just a little bit more life experience under your belt, having been at a different institution and having already navigated this big change, it kind of gives you that more growth compared to maybe students who have been at Western from their freshman year on. So you have more experience under your belt. That might be part of it, but like you said, April, you're kind of you've been in the workforce, and so you're used to taking on different kinds of responsibilities and just taking charge and that kind of stuff. Maybe anyone else want to share? Okay, so so here's just a little bit more about this transfer shock. It's kind of like a culture shock, and again, things are very different because of COVID and all that. But oftentimes when we're making a change, in the very beginning, you're so excited. You know, it's kind of like this honeymoon stage where everything's great. Oh my God, it's so exciting! Meet new people and meet professors and taking these courses that you've been waiting to take. And then you start to realize, oh, you know, I have to figure out a whole new way to get how to register or buy my books. And so there's this frustration stage that happens when you start to realize that there's also a lot of maybe flaws in this system. Like every system has something that maybe isn't working as well. So you may be moving from one environment where you knew how to do things into this new environment. So oftentimes there's a frustration. And then you start to adjust and you start to figure out, oh, I can go talk to Gabby about it, or I can go talk to Kristen, or there's this really nice person in the business department who was very helpful. And then in the end, there's that acceptance stage. So oftentimes people go through this process, just like they do when they're moving to a different country or experiencing something different. So are all of you here, is this your first term at Western, or sounded like, Ryan, that you've been here for a little bit?
Yeah, this is my second year at
There's a
Western.
second year, okay. Anyone here, this is your first term?
Yes, this is my first term.
It's your first term, okay. Anyone else?
Mine as
This is
well.
my first term as well.
Okay, yeah. So
And
where,
I graduate in like one term, so.
oh, you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so big diversity here. So where do you all see yourself if you're looking at this, these different stages? Where do you see yourself? What stage are you in right now in sort of transitioning to this new world?
It took a really long time, but I'm at acceptance. I
Awesome.
want to say that I stayed in frustration a little too long. I think the really cool part about the adjustment stage was learning that WU has so many different things to help accommodate and help you, and different resources. But the thing that I needed to realize was there were so many different resources. And if you didn't like one, you could get similar help from a different person in a different building. But there were so many different choices where I felt like back at my community college, you had one person to go to, maybe a second if they had the same sort of information available.
Mm-hmm.
And then most of the people there in my small town, they all knew me since I was a kid. So it was like, they didn't have to ask you questions. They already knew. And it was just a completely different feel. And then at OSU, it was different because I had no idea how to navigate any of the services. I was never a part of the disability services, which I should have had, which I do have here. So it was a learning curve.
Yeah.
Of learning
So
how
I
to
hope,
seek help.
and I hope those of you who are here your first term and you're kind of starting to feel frustrated, take Kelsey's words to heart and know that that stage will probably pass. You'll get to that next stage of adjusting and figuring things out and then accepting that this is just a different culture. It's not better or worse, it's just different. So what I'd like you to do is just to take a couple of minutes, maybe take out a piece of paper and a pen, and or maybe what I can do here. Yeah, just take out a piece of paper and just think about the most difficult situation you've encountered in your transfer experience. And what is maybe your proudest moment so far? Your proudest moment of your transfer? So now, of course, I'm going to ask again if anyone is willing to share maybe your most difficult situation that you've encountered.
I think mine, the major one, is doing all of this transferring completely distanced in a digital format is just another layer of like communication, possible breakdown, and just figuring out new things on top of new things, which like obviously using the skills of adapting and taking on responsibility and being forthright and forthcoming is helping me overcome that. But
Yeah.
like TSOR getting moved online just made it so a lot of, for me, like a lot of dots didn't connect and a lot of points got missed. And so like I'm just now figuring out like advising stuff and major stuff because the communication is just a lot slower. And
Yes.
so a lot of it's like external events that I like, things being online. And then I had to do summer term at Lynn Benton to like finish my associates. And then I was going to send my transcripts in, but both of the college's offices were closed because of the poor air quality. Like right when I was trying to do it.
Yeah, because we just needed one challenge right there. It just wasn't exciting enough for us. It was an incredible time to be doing all that. So, what did you have to rely on or lean on to help you get through that?
I mean, in a weird way, my younger brother, he's going to WSU, and so I was able to call him and commiserate and be like, what is happening? Because he kind of took the path of like straight out of high school into a university or a college.
Yeah.
So he, in many, even though he's younger, he's like got it more figured out than I do a little bit. And talking to my instructors, talking to my advisor from Lynn Benton, and just the fact that Lynn Benton and Western seem to be really closely connected made it a
Yeah.
lot easier. And I did do like all of the online TSOR stuff and trying to stay as connected as I can, but doing summer classes full time and then trying to connect with like the Woo Network thing was just a lot at once. But trying to utilize those resources and connecting with as many people as I can digitally.
Yeah. So when you all listened to April describe what she needed to do, what are some skills and strengths that you heard that she's using?
Seeking outside sources for support, being able to be, even if it's just for venting or looking for advice. I think that's important because that was something that I had written down as well, was that I decided to go to counseling so I could vent my frustration stage so that I would be able to get past that when I talk with my peer advisors or whoever else, my student success advisors or whatever.
Yeah,
that was very helpful.
it's those are incredible skills to develop, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to translate all this into stories and what you tell employers and grad schools and all that. But you know, every single one of us working right now have had to go through all of this with you all. We're all going through it, and there are some people who are doing really well through this transition, and others who really struggled. And I think you've just shown some persistence and some sort of agency for yourself. Like you really don't give up. You're resourceful and finding people, even though it's stressful, and people are just not as responsive as they typically are. That everybody just takes longer to do everything right now. So the fact that you've persisted through all that is is wonderful. And I think it's hard sometimes to realize that when you think everybody else is going through that, but those are very good things to use. Anybody have a particularly proud moment in their transfer experience?
It's like not entirely proud at the same time, because it was during the time where I was having the worst term, and I felt
Yeah.
like I was going to have to like withdraw a class or something or drop it, or I didn't know what I was going to do. And I ended up going to meet with my professor, and she just grabbed my hand and looked me in the eye and says, I know that you're intelligent enough to do this, and I know that you can bust this out, and we're going and we're going to continue the class. I know that you're not going to be one of the students that doesn't make it through this class. And that's
Wow.
one of those big moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, a professor like believes in me, and that helped me,
Yeah.
and I actually did pass that class with an A at the end. So
Wow. So that's amazing. She saw it. She could see it, even if you couldn't at the moment. Yeah.
I definitely couldn't at the moment, but I left that
Yeah.
office going, I'm going to go finish that now.
I love that. And just reaching out, just taking the chance of talking to someone helps.
Which is terribly scary when you feel like you're going to fail in the first beginning part of the class, and you're like,
Yeah.
I didn't do the one thing that they're basically like going to kick you out of class if you don't do at the beginning, and you're like, well, I'm going to spiral into all sorts of catastrophizing right now. And then I just pushed through it this one time, went and talked to someone who I felt was a little intimidating, and then realizing that they're very soft-hearted and they believed in me, and that was the big motivator.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it's oftentimes intimidating to go to a university. It seems somehow a little bit more intimidating than even maybe at a community college. You know, these are very highly educated people. It can be intimidating, but they're here because of you, because they love working with students. Okay, so let's see if I can get here to the so let's see. Sometimes this doesn't always move the way it's supposed to. Let's see. Okay, so it's important to think about that the benefits of experiencing these kinds of shock experiences like transfer shock or culture shock is that it can help you shape your personality by teaching you to trust your gut and to rely on yourself. And when you survive through periods of loneliness or unfamiliarity or sort of lack of confidence, that's where you build that trust with yourself, and it actually helps you build confidence. And because of that, you're often more likely and more comfortable taking risks in the future because you've been through something difficult once. You know you can handle it. And this is why I always recommend people do study abroad or do anything where they can kind of put themselves in these experiences, because you just come out of it typically feeling more confident and able to take risks. Also, one of the most valued qualities that employers are looking for right now is adaptability, because things are constantly changing, whether it's a technology or going from normal situation to COVID situation. You need people who are adaptable and can learn a new system of doing things. And that's actually super valuable. Some people think it's the most valuable thing that you can have in today's work environment is adaptability. And so the fact that you have adapted to this new system, and then with COVID on top of it, and then the fires, you've really been through the fire. And so being cognizant of that and being aware of that can actually be really powerful and empowering. It also helps you, coming from one environment to another, it helps you expand your horizons and circles of friends. And I know we're not meeting a lot with others in classrooms and things like that, but you might, through group projects and things like that, really get to know more people. And it just kind of, you're now meeting people from maybe broader circles from different parts of the country, maybe different countries. And so that really helps you. Broadening horizons is just going to help you see different perspectives and be more adaptable again. And then you want to realize that because you have already had maybe a little bit more experience than students who have been at Western their whole college career, you have a very unique perspective, and you may have a broader experience and perspective than a lot of students. So that's an advantage that you bring in. You're just a little bit more seasoned. And so here's a little quote. I forget who it was from, but there is wisdom in turning as often as possible from the familiar to the unfamiliar. It keeps the mind nimble, it kills prejudice, and it fosters humor. So being able to see different perspectives from different people, it really helps you challenge your biases, and you can become more accepting of different ways of being. So colleges actually really like transfer students, partly because it really expands the diversity on campuses. So when you bring, as a faculty member, I really enjoy having transfer students in my classes, and as a career counselor, I really love talking to transfer students because they have a lot more. They bring so much diversity, and they bring so much variety in their background, whether it's geographic variety. Oftentimes, sometimes a little bit older, not always. And so it's just, it kind of brings more to the college campus and makes it more diverse and more interesting. So it's really important to be proud of the background that you're bringing and really share that with others. There's another little theory that I wanted to bring in here too, so that to give you a sense of what this transition may have been and what's helpful in this. So Schlossberg, he's kind of famous for coming up with this transition theory, and so he defined this transition as any event or non-event that results in changed relationships, routines, assumptions, and roles. And it's if you feel like it's been a transition, because sometimes people go through these kinds of things and they maybe didn't impact them very much, but if you have this perception that you've been through that transition and that your life is just changing, your relationships, your routines, and your roles are changing, then that is something that is a period of adjustment. But he also defined or identified 4 major set of factors that have influenced a person's ability to cope with the transition. And one is just the situation. If you made the situation or the transition willingly as opposed to unwillingly, where you're forced to make a transition, it's always easier and better when you made that decision yourself. So that's probably one thing that you have going for you, is that it was a voluntary transition for you. And then there are some factors within the person, your internal resources. How hopeful are you? How optimistic are you about the outcome of the transition? That can really help in successfully going through it. It's obviously a lot harder when it seems very scary or very, it just kind of seems like it's going to be impossible. You may feel like that sometimes, but if you kind of get over that and can kind of develop that optimism, that's really helpful. Another really important thing is to get support. And sometimes that's hard when you're maybe new in an institution and your friends and families back home. But it's very important to rely on people, whether it's friends, family, or reaching out to new people, to institutional allies. Just like Kelsey said, going to talk to her professor, she kind of found an ally and she found a friend that could help her through. And that's really how people overcome most of their difficulties. And then the last one is the strategies, and you've already shown that you are doing that, seeking information from others, seeking resources, learning from other people, asking them, hey, can you give me, how did you do this? Learning from Kelsey's situation here, and realizing, boy, yeah, that really, I'm gonna definitely make sure to go talk to my faculty member in this class that I'm struggling with. And then kind of making sense of the situation through finding it meaningful, like looking at the difficulty that you're going through right now, going into this online learning and difficult new systems, that there's a meaning and there's some benefit that can come from it. All right, so let's see. So I mentioned earlier about adaptability being hugely important in career development. One, we've been going through very sort of interesting times for a long time, with their companies changing very fast, companies going in and out of business, companies moving to different locations, and technological times and changes. So it's already, like I said, it's very important to be comfortable with the unfamiliar, and willing and knowing and confident in going into adapting to the different changing situations. So here's where we're kind of transitioning a little bit, and what I'd like to do, let's see if I can do this. I'd like to upload, see if I can do that. I'm gonna upload a file. And it said network disconnect. I'm not sure what to say here. Let's see. Let me know if you receive it, please. It's called Transfer Advantage.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Sometimes it takes a little while. Let's see. Okay, I'll go ahead and share it with you. And then I'll send it separately. If you'll go ahead and maybe leave your email address, I will go ahead and send it to you. I'm not sure why it's not. Let's see if this one goes. Okay, this one went. I made a little bit of change to it so that if you see it, I did make a little change, but nothing major. So you'll get this one. Okay. All right. So this is what I'm sending to you. It's called the Transfer Advantage, and we're gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about how you can reflect on this experience and how you can come up with some ways to talk about it in a way that's really gonna help you have great stories and demonstrations of some qualities that definitely employers are looking for. So if you can pull that up, that might be good to have. But we'll go through the process, and then you can use this later on for yourself. So I'm going to go back here to presentation. Okay, so as you share, and you've already kind of shared a lot this afternoon, but helping employers and graduate schools really understand that you're bringing something unique. It's not enough just to have been through the experience, like just telling someone that I transitioned from one school to another, they may not necessarily know what that means. So you kind of have to translate that for them, telling them, what does it mean to you? Who are you as a result of having gone through that experience? And what can you do now? And how does that apply to your life, your employer, your grad school? So that's what we're going to go through a little bit. All right. So how does transferring experience factor into hiring decisions? So what you'll want to do is you want to think about whenever you're applying for a job or grad school, you want to think about the goals and the job description of the employer, and think about then, how does what you did as a transfer student relate to that specifically? So most people, they look for particular skills or particular strengths that they're looking for, but they don't necessarily care where they were developed. But you can come up with some great descriptions and tie them to your transfer experience. So you kind of have to do a lot of the work for them. And one thing to think about too, as you're thinking about employers, is what are some of the things that they tend to be looking for? One is they look for communication skills, whether it's to one-on-one or groups. So when you can talk about how you sought out advice and resources from people, and that you were resourceful, and that you were able to communicate with a lot of different kinds of people and learn what you needed to learn, that's a great example of a communication skill. Your written communication skills, those could be emails, those could be letters. Most employers are looking for an honest person, somebody who can show a lot of integrity, and somebody who can show consistency between what they put in their resume and what people say about them. Being somebody who has a strong work ethic and who's dependable, being analytical, having strong interpersonal skills, critical thinker, showing leadership, creativity, and time management. These are all skills that employers are looking for. And so it's always good to think about, how can maybe my transfer experience demonstrate some of these skills and give good examples that articulates that for an employer. So what I'd like you to do now, again, take out a piece of paper and a pen, and I'd like you to take a couple of minutes doing this. So I want you to think back to an event or a day where you felt an accomplishment as a transfer student. You did something that you're proud of and you did well, and it was also kind of fun. It was kind of exhilarating to you. So an event or a day where all of this came together, something that you were proud of, was a sense of accomplishment, and it was fun. So think of an event like that or a day like that. And then what I'd like you to do, if you see your handout where it shows it says using a STAR method. So when you tell a story, if you kind of give the situation, what was the situation? Was it, you would say, I was at Western Oregon University, or I was in this class, and you kind of give the situation. You talk about the task, which is what needed to be done. What was the problem you were solving? And then the A stands for action, something that you did or something that you personally did, and the R stands for result. So this is kind of, I'm sort of having you reflect a little bit, and then also put it in a format that we always train students to do when we're preparing for an interview. So think about the story and then kind of put it in this star format. It'll take a couple of minutes. All right. Do you need just a little bit more time? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and just kind of finish your thought on that. And I, of course, would love to hear an example if anybody would be willing to share their story, their star example.
Yeah, I would like to share.
Okay.
At Shemeketa, I had a disability services that helped me because I had a really bad epilepsy. So having stress of tests usually gave me grand mal seizures the night before. But when I came over to Western University, I've been clinically cured from it. So I didn't need the disability services anymore. So taking tests, while still had their stress levels, I didn't need the disability services anymore, but it was still a bit distracting not being in the same scenario I was at the other university. So, but what helped me go on was that I felt that while I was taking tests next to my fellow students and not by myself like I've done in the past, I felt like I was in like a similar environment of how they're thinking and how they're doing rather than being on my own. And the good result of that was that it did the test perfectly and I got a really good score and I was very happy with my process of how that worked. So
Say a little bit more about the action that you took.
the action was taking the test with the rest of the students. It was in a class environment that I wasn't used to.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And what did you do? I'm just kind of pulling just a little bit more information from you.
That's cool.
What did you do in order for you to be able to do that? What did it take?
One thing that I did is that I did a lot of studying with other people that I didn't usually do. I was more individualized with my studying in the other university, but having other people that I could fall back on and that we would be taking the test together that I wasn't used to was a big game changer for sure.
So if I was talking about doing this star example, that's what I would focus on as the action, because that's what you did.
Well, the test, besides
didn't
doing the
just
test, you
happen,
can't
right?
exactly talk to other
Yeah,
students.
what was
but,
that?
taking a test, you can't talk to other students or study
Right.
with them during the test. But
But,
taking
yeah.
the test action of it, it's very similar to being in disability services in my own little cubby. Yeah, you're kind of cut off in disability services, but being together in a classroom, you're surrounded with students, so you know what you're doing and what you're doing in the time limits that pertain to it.
Yeah. and you prepared well.
Yes.
You found ways to increase your confidence, and so the thing when you're listening to a story like that, again, what were some natural talents or transferable skills that you all heard from Ryan?
I heard a strength of networking and seeing the value of both being able to be self-sufficient, but also seeing when it's important to ask for help and when it's important to network and grow together as a group, and the benefits of both of those strategies.
Yes, definitely.
I would say that he also did a really good self-assessment, that he's at a different point in a different situation, and one thing was no longer serving him and he used something else in that place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also think it took a lot of courage to, it was a big risk, right? It was kind of going from something that was familiar and maybe comfortable to some extent, and taking that risk of not having that support around, but finding a way to develop as much confidence and comfort as possible. So yeah, there's always, the more you can kind of describe what you did, the more people can infer and hear different skills that they may be looking for. So, so that's great. So anyone else want to share, since we, let's see, let me see if I can. Typically, I might have you share in a group, but since there's just a few of us, I wonder maybe if we can hear one more story. Ashley, I wonder if you'd be willing to.
Okay. I had a really hard time getting my transcripts into Western Oregon from my previous college.
Mhm.
I tried 4 different times and my other college would not send them. They canceled them all 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bad. So I ended up having to physically go there. And for some reason, the offices were open even despite COVID. And they're like, no offices are open, blah, blah, blah. And I went there because a friend of mine was also having the same problem. And she's like, they're open today, go before it closes. And so I went there and I had to get my physical copy of my transcripts and then take that and then mail it to Western
Yeah.
to get my transcripts in. And I got them in like a month before classes started.
Ooh.
It was very interesting.
And what was the result? Did they got in time?
Somehow.
Somehow. Okay, so that's great. That's I think you really shared kind of what you did, and so what did you guys hear from Ashley's story? What did you take away from that?
Persistence in finding a way to solve the problem on your own when other
Yeah.
situations fail you.
Yeah.
Definitely feelings of agency where no one else is going to make this happen but me. Here I go, making it happen.
We're making this happen. Very, just did not give up. Ashley, you're very hopeful. You know, somehow you're going to make it happen. So there's good optimism there. Anything else?
I heard some, yeah, the optimism and the humor, like having a pretty good attitude about it instead of, getting stuck in that frustration stage. I heard Ashley, sharing some of that, like, okay, that didn't work. Let's go to the next option. Okay, that didn't work 4 times. Let's go try something else. And that's super important, especially in the job world, because you have to switch gears so many times, and your attitude changes everybody else's attitude about it, even if it is really unfortunate and you're not having a good time. We can pretend like we're having a good time.
Oh yeah.
We can
And,
make it fun while we're not having fun. It's fine.
Exactly. There's lots of ways that you might think things are not fun. There's frustrating people who do things differently that, so if you have sense of humor, it kind of lightens things up and it's easier to think creatively. And you were very creative and you just jumped on it when your friend said go, and you didn't even question, you went into action. And so that was really great. And I would definitely use this story. If anybody's looking for someone who overcomes, any kind of bureaucracy or working, through any kind of challenge, I think this is a very excellent example. So let's see here. Okay, so since there's only just a few of us, I think we'll just leave that. And so then let's go to your handout again. And I want to kind of look at some of the things that I mentioned in there. So you already kind of thought back on an event or a day where you felt an accomplishment, your sense of pride, and it was kind of fun, Ashley was able to laugh at it afterwards. What do employers say? They say, they're looking for candidates who are adaptable and flexible. They can handle rapid changes, bounce back when things go wrong, maintain a sense of humor, and roll with the changes. Thinking back on your transition or that example, do you feel that there was any kind of commonality between the stories, Ryan's stories and April's, and even some of the things that Ashley and Kelsey shared? Have you noticed any similarities in the strengths that were used?
Navigating an unfamiliar system.
Yep. Yeah.
I would say taking on personal responsibility, even when maybe there is another person that's supposed to be doing something. Like, you'd think if you order your transcripts, there's somebody who's supposed to take care of that. But just being like, you got to make it happen on your own, even if it's like doesn't feel fair or whatever. Just the agency and the self-possession to get what you want done.
Awesome. Yeah. All of you have taken some risk. All of you have been adaptable, persistent, and so that's something to keep in mind, because sometimes it could be easy just to say, kind of to blame people, but you took creative responsibility and you problem solved around all of that. So how do you talk about this and how do you write about this in the future? So obviously the one very important thing is also always to make it relevant. What are some career goals that you all are kind of playing with right now? What are some different career options you guys are considering? Accounting, obviously.
Professional editing and writing.
Right. Perfect. That requires a lot of adaptability. There's not going to be very structured here. Here's just how you do it. You're going to have to be very adaptable and confident in navigating that. Yeah. How about you, Kelsey?
I'm applying for graduate school for art therapy programs.
Wow. Wonderful.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. I know.
Creativity, all of it.
Creativity, yeah.
Technically applying for two different master's programs, because one is a master's in art and the other one's a master's in therapy. So you're doing two things at once. So it's a pretty cool program that I'm looking forward to.
Wonderful. And Ashley, what are you thinking about?
Either ASL interpreting for Broadway or somewhere abroad.
Okay. Yeah. Look at all that confidence you guys have. You're pursuing some pretty amazing goals. And all of that has been building as you have kind of navigated these different environments. So being able to share that resilience, one of the things that grad schools want to find out is, are you someone who's going to start and finish? Are you somebody who can persist and who's been through different things? That's very important. And working with people, whether it's in interpreting or as an art therapist, you need to be someone who's very comfortable with all different kinds of people, can adapt to different perspectives. So these are really good skills to have for that. And Ryan, you're gonna, working in a business environment, it is constantly changing, whether it's technology or working with different scenarios or different groups. I don't know exactly what kind of accounting you're thinking, but it's just really important. So here's one example of how you might talk about something like this in a cover letter, depending on what the employer is looking for. But here is, my diverse college career has allowed me to develop strong adaptability skills. I successfully navigated different systems and cultures and was resourceful in building networks and reaching out to resources. So this may be a type of job where the employer says they're looking for someone like that, somebody who is comfortable with diversity, somebody who can collaborate with people across divisions or different departments. And so here's an example of where you did that as a transfer student. Here is also in terms of interviewing. One of the things that I always emphasize in interviewing is to identify the ideal qualities of a candidate for that program, for that job, or for that grad school. Identify what is the ideal candidate. And then you think about ones that also describe you. And then what you do is you write stories that describe and demonstrate those qualities. So let's say adaptability, for instance, then you can write a star, just like you just did with, use the STAR method to write out how you used and demonstrated those strengths and skills. If you have 4 different qualities that you want to emphasize in your interview, whether it's for a job or a grad school, and you have stories to back up those qualities, that's what's going to set you apart. People listen to stories, and if you can paint them a picture like I persisted, and when when my institution just didn't follow through, this is how I problem solved it, and I did it with humor and grace. People are going to listen to that and say, yeah, this is the kind of thing that we're looking for. So oftentimes they might ask questions in an interview. So more directly, they might ask for behavioral type questions and ask things like, tell me about your most challenging experience as a student, or tell me about a time when you exhibited resourcefulness, or give me an example of being adaptable. So that's great when they ask you very straightforward questions like that. You are now been, I'm sure, very aware of what are the strengths that you're bringing. But even if they don't ask you questions like that, always have examples. Always think about a way to, I always say, kind of have evidence, have proof that you've developed those skills. So we're at the end of our session today, but I really would like to hear just a couple of things from you in terms of what you take away from today.
This STAR method is super, super helpful. And I've been over here like writing down like, oh, that's a good story to attach to those things. Just trying to write those down because I'm going into interviews for the next like 6 months. I have at least like 4 that I know I have to do. And so those are things like I'm just paranoid that I'm going to put my foot in my mouth and I'm going to ruin it. But if I practice enough, it might feel more scripted, but still like I can improv it and just feel more comfortable. Just preparing myself. I
Yeah,
like to be
over
prepared.
preparing. I also want to invite, you just reminded me that our office offers mock interviews. So you can very easily make a mock interview and practice with us and get all that, awkwardness out of the way, and then you'll shine in the interview.
I was just going to share that it's nice in this time of being more isolated to connect with other transfer students and hear what everyone else's experience is. And it helps conceptualize my own experience and not feel alone. So that's been very beneficial for me.
Good. I know what you mean. It's so helpful to listen to other people. Yeah. Well, I have to say, it's just been a real honor, and I appreciate that you all were so willing to share, because that's what makes it helpful, not just for you, but everyone in the process. So it was just a real pleasure. And you can always make an appointment in our office. We offer obviously mock interviews, resume reviews, career counseling. That's my expertise, is career counseling. And helping you find opportunities like internships, even virtual internships, or different opportunities just to grow professionally. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that, use that resource. So with that, I think, unless you have anything else to add, Gabby or Kristen, I think that's the end.
Thanks for showing up, everybody. I'm sure it's a commitment to show up to things when you're already on the computer a lot during the days and during the weeks. So I really appreciate you showing up. This event was super popular last year, and so we wanted to bring it back because it's really valuable and like immediately can use these skills that Adri brings to the table. So thank you so much, Adri, for being here
You're
with
welcome.
us.